Just highlight the. As he's getting on the train, the bomb dropped, exploded, knocked over a clock that hit Mrs. Polgraf on the head. And the question was it negligence? Was that a foreseeable risk? Because chain of events, it was the but-for course, but it wasn't the proximate. But he starts the decision with 3 simple words: danger invites rescue. Yeah, the case is over because I know. She was getting on the train and she tripped and fell, and the guy ran over to help her, and she fell, and then when they dropped, that's when the train dropped. I don't know. The particles dropped the ball. Yeah. But the first 2 words of it, danger invites rescue. It just set the whole tone for the decision, you know? Nobody writes like that. Perfect. No, just leave it. Just the way it is. On what? I think he's going to. That's the impression I have from what he was saying. What was it?
That's my gentleman legal.
Okay. So Melissa was emailing during that process.
How do you know that?
Because I got my case that everybody knows. Half the
was just gonna say everyone's in that thing. Thankfully, I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know.
So, Melissa,
Yes. That's not the word. Oh, yeah, it was just in there saying. I think it's recording. Was I not listening? Of course I was listening. I am a multitask woman. Do you not hear me? I did not. Oh, that one. Yes. Of course. You guys really want to come in?
I'm not.
Your name's on it.
Don't worry about me. No,
Your name's on it.
My name, no, I'm saying, I don't schedule it. That nothing to do with it.
Oh, you and your other
You
pieces.
know I do 10 things at
I
once.
am very impressed.
Don't you catch on you do? When I was writing some exhibit, I stopped and I got the paper ready.
Stop. He's got cheese. Right now. Yeah, he's like a really nice guy. So
Okay.
contentious, like there was no husband. Like this is contentious and it's really contentious now. Don't.
Can you open that door? Please. Usually we have to do that one.
No, I didn't. If you want, you can sit there.
Your best way to get in there. Not having to deal with that. No, you're not good. Yes, of course, I walked into the city.
Thank you. I don't know. It's so true, isn't it? It's so true.
All right, ready to go? All right. Providence Superior Court is back in session. The Honorable Superior Court Justice Jeffrey A. Lamprey presiding. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Thank you. Please be seated.
Just like to remind you that I have previously been sworn in, you are still under oath. You do state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jim McDonald.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have this mark?
Absolutely. Exhibit number 34 for identification. One moment, counsel, I gotta get the witness.
Dr. McDonald, when we left class, we were talking, or I was talking about a study in the West African country in the South. And you said you were familiar with that study, correct?
That's correct.
Let me show you what the mark is in Exhibit 14. I mean 34, sorry, 34. As you take a look at this document and tell me, is this the study took place in Guinea Bissau? It's currently ongoing under the collaboration of the University of Southern Denmark and Engineers Without Borders.
I mean, I'm looking at the cover sheet, that's what it says.
Okay. And if you turn to page 2, you notice that children as young as 10 are involved in this study.
Okay, I mean, it does also say the study is active and not recruiting, so I don't know what that means. I don't know if the study is actually happening.
Okay. But if I told you that this study, a randomized control study of children as young as 10, regard to cloth masks, you don't have any information to contradict this, do you?
No.
Okay. So that's not an unethical study, is it, Doctor?
I haven't seen the study design. I can't comment on what's going on in Africa. I don't know the situation over there. It's very different what's going on in the United States.
They care less about their kids there than we do? Is that what you're saying?
Actually, I didn't say that. And actually, as a
Is that what you're
pediatrician,
implying?
excuse me?
Is that what you're implying?
You gotta let him answer the question if you ask.
So, as a pediatrician, I value every child's life. Part of my role as a pediatrician is to advocate for children. I've actually done a lot to keep children healthy and prevent them from dying. I've actually practiced medicine in the third world. And I've practiced in all parts of the United States, many times where no one else could go. I've seen children die in third world countries. I can tell you firsthand, parents grieve the same way anyone else would grieve. And so no, I would never imply that a parent doesn't love their child in a third world country. What was implying is, I don't know what's going on in the pandemic in Africa. I can't see the study design, and I don't know what's going on. So, yes, I think parents love their children in Africa.
Let's get back to, Doctor, the concept of randomized control trials versus observational studies. You admitted earlier this morning that you believe, you agree with Dr. Boston that randomized control trials are the gold standard of studies, correct?
Yes, if you can do it, I'd love to do it.
And in fact, that concept goes back at least 100 years to Dr. William Kellogg, who published a study about the effectiveness of face masks during the 1918 pandemic, right?
Yeah, you quoted that study earlier, and I'm not familiar with this study.
Okay, well, I'll show it to you. Next exhibit.
I think it's exhibit 35.
You want a minute to review it, or I can point you to the specific quotes that I think are relevant. Tell me when you're ready, Bob.
Ready for?
Do you need time to review it, or are you ready for me to ask you a question?
Well, you don't want him to read the entire exhibit.
Right.
He's scanning it. He's scanning it.
I mean, I have the study in front of me. If you want me to read it, it's going to take me some time.
Okay, well, why don't we do this, Doctor? On the first page, on the very top of the box, can you read what it says?
It says masks have not been proved efficient enough to warrant compulsory application for checking of epidemics, according to Dr. Kellogg, who has conducted a painstaking investigation with gauzes. This investigation is scientific in character, omitting no one of the necessary factors. It ought to settle the much-argued question of masks for the public.
Okay. And then, if you look on page 2, the highlighted, there's a, sorry. Go down to the bottom of the first column, where it says, in the last paragraph, the failure of the mask was a source of disappointment. For the first experiment in San Francisco was watched with interest, with the expectation that if it proved feasible to enforce the regulation, the desired result would be achieved. I believe there you referred to a regulation mandating mask wearing in San Francisco. Is that correct?
You read it, so I'm just acknowledging that you read it. I don't know what it's referring to.
Dr. You have a Master's of Public Health. You're the head of the COVID unit in Rhode Island. And you're not familiar with Dr. Kellogg and his report on the masking
No.
in the 1918 pandemic? Flu pandemic?
I'm not familiar with this study. I don't even think it's relevant.
Well, I didn't ask you that, Doctor. I'm asking if you're familiar with it.
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. He goes on to say the first proof
Objection,
showed.
Your Honor, I just want to note that this exhibit isn't in full at this point.
It is a full exhibit
It
already?
is not.
Yes, I know that.
Well, at this point, Your Honor, I wouldn't do this.
No objection.
35 is full.
Plaintiff's 35 full.
Can I just be clear, is 34 also full?
34 is still ID counsel.
Can I move 34 as well?
It's still ID counsel.
Can I move that full as well? 34?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, just taking a moment to look at it.
34 is full.
To continue. The masks, contrary to expectations, were worn cheerfully and universally, and also contrary to the expectation of what should follow under such circumstances. No effect on the epidemic curve was to be seen. Something was plainly wrong with our hypothesis. So, is it your testimony, Doctor, that you think because this is 100 years old, Dr. Kellogg, his observations from back then are not worth even considering?
Objection, Your Honor, I just want to note we're talking about something Dr. McDonald has not had an opportunity to fully review, and he's being asked specific questions with respect to that. I'd ask that he be given an opportunity to read this study.
But he did,
I am very confident that Dr. McDonald can speak for himself.
It's a 100-year-old study. We have far better studies. I haven't looked at the study. I'm not familiar with it. But I can assure you, when I'm looking through science to make public health recommendations for Rhode Island, I'm not looking at studies that are 100 years old. I can assure you of that. I'm looking at contemporary studies that are done in our time. There's so much different about the 1918 pandemic than about the current pandemic that I wouldn't be looking at this. And I don't know what kind of masks they were using. I don't even know if people had soap. I don't know what their living conditions were like. I don't even know if the influenza strain was really respiratory or droplet spread or also spread by contact. I just don't know those things. So no, I don't know the study and I really can't give it any weight right now.
Doctor, would you agree with me that the last time in this country that anybody tried to impose a mask mandate to forestall an epidemic was in the 1918 flu epidemic? It's never been tried since then, until now, correct?
That's correct.
So for 100 years after Dr. Kellogg's report, no public entity in this country even considered mandating people wear masks, right?
Objection, speculation.
Question is fair.
And yet, all of a sudden, this pandemic...
Did you answer?
No.
Yes, he said right. I think he agreed.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
You said right. You meant yes.
Yes, I meant yes, thank you.
So, now all of a sudden, in this pandemic that started in March 2020, public health officials in this country, some of them, like you, have decided to ignore 100 years of history and suddenly impose masking. Is that true?
Objection, Your Honor, he's asking to opine about what other public health officials do. It wasn't specifically related just to Dr. McDonald.
Yes, I'm absolutely going to ignore a 100-year-old study where there's much better studies out there, absolutely.
That wasn't the question.
Okay,
The question was, since that study, for the last 100 years, up until March of 2020, no public health official has tried to impose a mask mandate to forestall an epidemic, correct?
yes, that's correct.
That, in fact, there's an exhibit in evidence. The CDC itself said in February of 2020, masks don't work. Don't mandate them, right?
Yes, the CDC did say that. However, on the May 7th science update that is referenced as Exhibit B, They did a very thorough review and then came out with a different recommendation. They looked at 65 different articles and really presented the case very, I think, efficiently and effectively on why they recommended masks.
Well, again, Dr. gets to that, but my question is, for 100 years, it was never, the recommendation regarding not wearing masks, or wearing masks, never changed for 100 years.
That's right, it did.
Okay. So something happened after March of 2020 to change that perception, right?
Well, yes, but something happened before March of 2020 to change that perception.
All right. You rely heavily on these MMWRs, correct?
Yes, there's some of the documents I looked at, sure.
Well, most of what you have submitted as evidence, mostly all of them are MMWR reports, right?
Well, yes, but the science briefs are actually review articles based on other articles that don't include morbidity, mortality, weekly reports. So I definitely do look at the morbidity, mortality, weekly report. It's a very reliable journal that I think is very efficient and very effective.
And I think you testified that earlier that you considered them better than peer review.
I do.
Even though testimony was and the evidence was that those studies have to conform with the CDC policy, correct?
Well, yes, and if you remember the 2011 document, it was titled something like The History of the MMWR. There's a sentence that says it's not traditionally reviewed like other peer-reviewed journals, but then they want to explain what I think is a very heightened level of review, far more review than I've ever had for any article I've ever published. So it's a very extensive review. So yes, it's a very extensive review for anything you publish in the MMWR.
But it's reviewed internally within the CDC, correct?
Well, it's reviewed by the CDC, but the authors are often not CDC.
But it has to be approved by the CDC.
Absolutely has to be approved by the CDC.
Do you have any concern that the MMWR reports might be compromised because of political pressure put on them by the CDC?
No.
Are you aware, Doctor, that there's currently an investigation by Congress into the politicization of the MMWRs?
No.
You're not aware of that?
No.
If you were aware of that, would that concern you about their reliability?
You know, Congress investigates a lot of things, and the political world is what it is, quite frankly.
So you're comfortable ignoring the possibility that these MMWR reports are being skewed to represent the current policy of the current presidential administration?
So I didn't say that.
Okay, well, if you knew that it was possible that political pressure was being put on the CDC and the MMWR to conform to political policy, would that concern you about the reliabilities of these reports?
You know, they're journals. They have references. You can look at what they're saying. They are read by people like myself who are experts in the field, and I can make my own determinations, and I do. Every study that they put out, I review. I sometimes even discuss them with colleagues.
Ms. Mark, next, please.
Papers Exhibit 36, marked for identification.
There's no objection.
Counsel, I'm sorry. The reporter left the building, now he left the room, now he's left the camera on. I mean, it's nobody's responsibility but the reporter, but. Sheriff, would you be kind enough to take me to Southwell?
Yes, Your Honor.